It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe, and we begin here at home with the continuation and development of details of a tragedy. Renowned Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie has demanded accountability from Eurocare, a private hospital in Lagos, accusing it of medical negligence and professional impropriety. This followed the death of her 21-month-old son, Nkanu Nnamdi, after a series of medical procedures. The legal notice issued without prejudice to the parents' rights and signed by the law firm led by Professor Kemi Pinheiro, SAN, outlined multiple alleged lapses in pediatric anesthetic and procedural care. These included concerns about the appropriateness and cumulative dosing of propofol in a critically ill child, inadequate airway protection during deep sedation, and failure to ensure continuous physiological monitoring. The parents further alleged that their son was transferred without supplemental oxygen, without adequate monitoring, and without sufficient accompanying medical personnel. Also, Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, also ordered a probe into the alleged medical negligence that reportedly led to the death of Master Nkanu. The probe followed public concern caused by the tragedy. Sanwo-Olu gave the directive through the Health Facility Monitoring and Accreditation Agency following public concern generated by Ms. Adichie's account of the tragic incident which occurred on January 7th. And we will continue to track details and developments from that story. Now, elsewhere, some governors yesterday celebrated the Nigerian military by joining in the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, commending President Bola Tinubu's commitment to the military. That was as Minister of Defense General Christopher Musa retired, reaffirmed Tinubu's commitment to prioritizing the welfare, motivation, and adequate equipping of the armed forces and other security agencies to enable them carry out their constitutional duties with professionalism and efficiency. Senate President Godswill Akpabio assured Nigerians that the National Assembly, working closely with the executive, remained committed to restoring peace and security across the country. Ogun State Governor Dapo Abiodun, while commending the federal government for its unwavering commitment to safeguarding life and property across the country, said it was in line with the Renewed Hope agenda. Well, also, Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara urged Rivers people to remain calm and trust in God, assuring them that his administration would continue to work to sustain peace and progress in the state. Fubara made the call yesterday during an interdenominational church service held in commemoration of the 2026 Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day at St. Cyprian's Anglican Church, Port Harcourt. The governor emphasized that his quietness and calm were solidly from his source, God, whom he said gave him confidence and strength. He said there was no need for panic or agitation when one was anchored on divine authority.
When we were marking the New Year dinner, I said something that dogs bark when they don't understand. Now see, I think a lot of you don't understand, and that's the reason why I don't shout, I don't complain. I know what I have. I know that I have what is supreme, and that is God. So, I want everyone to be relaxed. What is important is peace for this dear state, and we'll get it.
All right, well, let's look at other developments as the federal government expects to raise more than 189 billion naira in 2026 from the sale of national assets and the privatization of selected public holdings, positioning asset disposals as a critical plank in financing what is set to be Nigeria's largest budget in nominal terms. Now, details contained in the 2026 appropriation bill seen by this day showed that 189.16 billion naira forms part of a 25.27 trillion naira financing package designed to plug a wide fiscal deficit arising from expenditure that significantly exceeds projected revenues. The projection sits alongside 23.04 trillion naira in new debt financing and about 2.05 trillion naira in multilateral and bilateral project-tied loans, underlining the increasing reliance on non-oil funding sources to support government operations and capital investments. Now, although the assets for sale and privatization in 2026 were not explicitly listed, the federal government has been considering a broad range of transactions as part of an ongoing effort to monetize public holdings, reduce fiscal pressure, and reposition the state away from direct participation in commercial activity. These plans cut across oil and gas, power, transport, industry, real estate, and other strategic sectors. Now, finally, in security news, the Katsina state government has justified its plan to facilitate the release of 70 individuals facing trial for alleged involvement in banditry, describing it as part of efforts towards consolidating peace deals with armed groups operating across the state. The state's Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Nasir Mwazu, said the decision was aimed at sustaining peace accords reached between affected communities and repentant bandits. The commissioner explained this in an interview on Saturday amid public outrage over a leaked government letter seeking judicial intervention to secure the release of the suspects currently undergoing prosecution. He said the peace agreements had resulted in the release of about 1,000 abducted persons across several communities. According to the commissioner, at least 15 local government areas were involved in the peace arrangement, which he said had led to the release of about 1,000 abductees. Mwazu likened the release of the suspects to what happens during wartime, where warring parties exchange prisoners. Now, of course, this has created a lot of conversation, a lot of debate around how this issue is being tackled. Rufai, I hand over to you alongside economic issues, governors commemorating Armed Forces Remembrance Day, and of course, that deep tragedy for the Chimamanda Adichie Egese family.
You see, the emergency lovers of Nigeria, when I say may Nigeria not happen to us, they will squeal like earthworm that you put salt on. But is it not shocking that a state government is the one defending bandits today, that they have a peace arrangement? So it was true that the peace tour carried out by bandits was in partnership with the state government. In fact, can you see how shamefully they're even telling us the merits of what has transpired? That, oh, the peace has led to release of 1,000 people. Then they are trying to secure judicial release for bandits. just imagine that. Whoever thought a day will come that the state governments will be trying to secure judicial release for bandits to be able to honor a peace deal? The question we should ask the Katsina state government is this the first of such peace deals? In the end, bandits, terrorists, whatever you call them, they will break it. Until we get a state that can fight the problem of insecurity to a standstill, we do not have a nation. The next thing, the representative of the government had the effrontery, the unmitigated temerity to come out to tell us that this is what happened in war-torn situations where there's a prisoner exchange. So people that were kidnapped have now become prisoners of war, right? Is that what is happening? And the state government has the effrontery to tell us that there was a prisoner exchange, that's why people were released. So we should also, in turn, go and tell the states to release the bandits. You see, when we say Nigeria is a failed state or is a failing state, you think we're joking, but these are vestiges of a failing state. A state where the leadership has no capacity, no capability, no supremacy of violence to fight out non-state actors. Is that not failure? What does Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution says? The states must have the capacity to protect people. That's why we surrender our sovereignty. But if it is out of the generosity of bandits now that people are being protected in Katsina State, the same criminals that have killed people. Just over the weekend, we heard about killings in Kogi of our valiant servicemen. So what does the Katsina state government want an average soldier that is fighting on the battlefront to think? Because after they capture these terrorists, states like the Katsina state government can go and make a deal with them in the bid to be able to have peace. I would tell you the way it is. We are losing our country. And it is sad, if not to say we have lost. And I feel even more sad on a day closer to the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, where we are wearing the puppy today to celebrate those that have laid down their lives for this country. Those are the true heroes, and those are the people we should celebrate, not these terrorists that the state, Katsina State, is now making a deal with. It's a very sad one. Very sad one. Another very sad one is the case of Chimamanda. My friend, my sister. And this is dear to me. Because for me this morning, this is a personal loss since I heard the news. Her sons, Kanu, her kids I've played with. I love children. And I love to have a playtime with children. And I've played with these boys in question. And only for me to hear that kids that brought joy to me passed in such a circumstance is a very debilitating one. And I only can just imagine how Chimamanda and her family and her husband Ivara feels right now. It's a very sad one. So please, I would like to beg all of you to respect your privacy, because we've started to see you people, those that have been looking for a chance to be able to get a shot at Chimamanda. This is your glory time. You've started to run your mouth and say all sorts. But you wouldn't understand that when people grieve, we should grieve with them. I've also heard you, those that have no empathy in their hearts, and all they're saying now is it because she's a public figure? We've also heard you. And I want you to search deep inside your hearts and ask yourself, is that the right thing to say to somebody grieving that just lost both of her parents a couple of years ago and now her child? But the other side of it, the hospital has released a statement saying that they're open to investigation, that they did everything right. So there's a lot of back and forth. And when there's a lot of back and forth like that, I'm happy the Lagos State government has said they will investigate. So let them have a look at this matter and let an independent inquiry go on. I don't want to go through the details this morning because it's just going to open the wound again for the parents. I just pray that at some point they find healing, which is a difficult thing to say this morning. And please, please, I beg you, for those that will say all sorts, be careful. Remember, this is a mother that has lost her child. This is not your time to gloat. Please.
Okay, the death of Chimamanda Adichie's son is a profound tragedy. Now, I've said on this table before that I have been corrected by, or we had been corrected, the public had been corrected by a knowledgeable man, Fola Adiola, in this instance. Say that it's not always that Nigeria happens to people. That it's Nigerians that happen to other Nigerians. Take the case of the tragedy that has occurred in the household of an author, a celebrated writer, global icon in Nigerian diamond. She came home to celebrate Christmas and New Year, what some other people call Dirty December, and then look at what has happened. And the whole point is about negligence. There is a course in law faculties that is called Law of Medical Ethics. What you learn in the Law of Medical Ethics is how to keep an eye on how, cases of medical negligence occur. And many Nigerians who are not fully educated about their rights do not know this. And now this has happened, and she says she will go to court, which is perfectly the thing to do. But all of that process is not going to provide a remedy. When doctors make mistakes, they bury their mistakes, which is the tragic thing about the law of medical ethics, because the damage will have been done. So we condole with her, we commiserate with her, and we hope that this will not become a signal for other Nigerians who are abroad, who are contributing to this country, to say, oh, we will not go to that country. Look at Anthony Joshua. the tragedy that also happened in that regard. Many Nigerians abroad who come home and they say they want, to come home and identify with their country. If the hospital does not fail them, the road lies in wait for them. I think that is the big tragedy in this particular instance. So, it's very sad for all of us. As parents, we know what this means. It's really a profound tragedy. But it's a good thing that the Lagos State government says they will probe the process. The hospital, affected private hospital itself, has provided some kind of explanation, some kind of excuse that they maintain professional standards and all that. But it is a fact of medicine that there's something called negligence. There's something called ethics, and that is what the investigation should focus on, including the involvement of the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. These are the issues in this particular regard. But unfortunately, whatever process you initiate will not bring back the dead. Now, the other important issue has to do with the Nigerian government saying, we're going to, sell assets worth about 189 billion naira to fix the gap, the deficit in the 2026 budget. Well, let us make this point. One, the list of those assets to be sold have not been provided. But it is a fact, is it not? It is that there are wasting assets, abandoned assets, like the refineries of Nigeria, like Jakuta, like other assets, Federal Secretariat in Lagos. Now, what is important is not just the intention, it's the process. One, there should be proper revaluation, which is what I think Dr. Ayoteriba talks about. He's an economist and is part of the family. There should also be transparency. We should know what is the worth of those assets, what are those assets, and then there should be statutory responsibility. The only body in the laws of Nigeria that is responsible either for the sale or privatization or liquidation or the concession of Nigerian assets is the Bureau for Public Enterprises. This should be handled by the Bureau for Public Enterprises, and the Bureau of Public Enterprises should show responsibility in handling this. Now, for example, I think, the refineries, for example, and all the other assets that we have mentioned. The Nigerian government should show a commitment that it wants those assets to begin to work. It's not just about money. Because who wants to invest in a moribund asset, in a wasted asset? Nigerian government cannot go there and say we want to take 80%. Nobody will come. In any of those assets that they are planning to sell, Nigerian government should not take more than 10% or 20%. Because if the Nigerian government had been so capable, we will not be talking about selling assets. But the longer term, of course, is that even if you succeed in this process, as opaque as it appears at the moment, because we don't even know the assets they want to sell, they should tell us so that we can interrogate and give them opinions, informed opinion. But whenever they sell, what would they do with the money? That is the other question. I hope that those resources that will be given will not be wasted. We're talking about 189 billion of taxpayers' money in this regard. As for the armed forces, yes, it's good to celebrate the armed forces. I'm wearing the poppycock. I've been wearing this consistently for about 2 weeks. I see Rufai has it. You are the omission. You don't have it. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe because you have Zimbabwe. From Zimbabwe,
no, I have been wearing it
you don't think that the Nigerian forces
forgot to wear it this morning.
But,
yes,
it's good for the governors to celebrate the Nigerian armed forces. They protect us. They are willing to give up their lives so that we can live a better life. I usually tell a story about what happens in other parts of the world, where when a Marine enters an airport, you see ordinary citizens who stand up to honor that particular Marine because they know that these are the people who protect the country. I hope we will get to the stage someday in Nigeria when the ordinary citizen will realize how important the ordinary soldier is who has laid down his life in order to protect this country. As for Katsina, I think it beggars belief. It is shocking. The Commissioner for Homeland Security and Internal Affairs in that state says that whoever is not happy with what Katsina State has done should just go to court and seek redress. I find this insolence, this bravado, I find it objectionable. Nigerians are saying, look, don't give pepper soup and jollof rice to persons, who have been identified as bandits. The actual word is criminals. And then he says, well, we have been having a peace agreement with them, and they have released some kidnapped persons, abducted persons. In Dusima alone, 62 persons. In Bakari local government, up to about 125 persons. In other local government, they just turned human beings into commodities. In Katsina State, that can be abducted at will, and then you take them to court, and you now say, okay, we have reached a peace agreement, we are going to cancel, we are going to release the bandits that are in court, and they have given us people. In Musawa local government, 28 persons. Just add up the numbers in about the 30 local governments in that particular state. And then the the minister and the commissioner for Home Affairs and Internal Security comes and tells us, if you are not happy with what we are doing in Katsina State, you can go to court and seek redress. I think this will empower the bandits. It will give them hope that if you can capture, kidnap as many people as possible, the state will come and negotiate. That, again, is a tragedy. That the state would not follow the rule of law and will say, okay, bandits are giving us back people, they too are free. Would that guarantee that they will not abduct more people in Katsina State? That's the irony.
All right, thank you so much for that. Well, where do I begin? Let's begin with Armed Forces Remembrance Day, where I do reiterate my tender of apology for having been absent-minded, getting my kids ready for school this morning and forgetting to wear my badge. But I would also say that a part of it is because I carry the meaning of a soldier's sacrifice deeply in my heart as the daughter of a retired brigadier general who joined the liberation struggle of Zimbabwe at the tender age of 16 and spent a couple of decades of his life rendering service to free the nation from colonialists in Zimbabwe, from southern Rhodesia to Zimbabwe. I've lived firsthand with a soldier's experience. I know the stories. I've heard firsthand what happens on the battlefront when you lose men, how you retrieve them, and how that trauma never goes away. So I think it's important in the spirit of this day, in this season, beyond the symbolism of the badges that we wear, to also acknowledge the huge sacrifice, the huge risk that is made, and also acknowledge the call that has been made by President Bola Tinubu and also Minister of Defense, retired General Christopher Musa, in saying that welfare needs to be the priority. How well taken care of are our men? How willing are they to go to the front lines? They're the ultimate patriots. And are we ensuring that they are well compensated for that? And it's not just monetary compensation. What about the emotional support that's required for the post-traumatic trauma that a lot of them live with beyond? Even as family members of those who have been to the battlefront, we are affected as well. So it's important for the state, as much as this annual commemoration is very important and it's significant, it's important for this message to continue throughout the year, and also for it to not be hijacked by some political narratives in some areas that we have seen it being done. So I think very important to reiterate our solid stand with our armed forces. Now, when I think about Armed Forces Remembrance Day, of course, I always go back to that declaration or proclamation of no victor, no vanquished. And to me, it connects to a number of our stories in the headlines today. Let's begin with the issues around privatization. General Gowon is somebody who was very bullish about the issue of nationalization. If you remember, in that era of Pan-Africanism, in that era of liberalization, of independence from colonialism, nationalization of assets was the biggest conversation, primarily because our new and relatively economically fragile states at that time couldn't have afforded to buy back or to have a private sector that could have created a buzzing economy. And so what was said in the national interest was to say the state must take over all strategic assets, all national security related assets, all industry that we felt was central and pivotal to economic stability. And of course, we've seen what happened over the years, time and time again, not just in Nigeria, across most countries that nationalized, is that we saw corruption, political interference, state capture, a number of things make these institutions highly, highly inefficient. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that we're seeing privatization in Nigeria. And of course, in the past, it continues to be something that was hugely controversial, hugely scandalous and salacious. So now we ask ourselves, in this instance, what will be done differently? Well, where were the success stories? If you look at banking, the success stories in the privatization of the Nigerian banking sector were around the fact that the industry itself, the sector, became well liberated and well regulated. So wherever these institutions that the state wants to let go of are going to be let go of, those industries also need to be well regulated and well supported to ensure that private participation is going to bear fruit. It's not just about the state saying, oh, we can't handle these facilities, we're dumping them. No, they must become economically viable institutions that employ people, that contribute to our GDP. Let them not be white elephants as the government walks away with the proceeds of the sales. Now, in light of this sale that's supposed to generate about 189 billion, we're also receiving reports that there's additions that have been made to the budget to the tune of 3.5 trillion naira. Now, this is coming as a directive had been issued that the MDAs were to carry over 70% of their capital budgets from previous budgets and focus on finishing projects as opposed to introducing new projects. So now you look at a government that's about to sell 189 billion worth of assets and MDAs that are bringing 3.5 trillion extra to add to the budget. So it's just a drop in the ocean with regards to where the budget deficit, moving the needle in the budget deficit. And we ask ourselves, this harmonization of 3 budgets, potentially 4 budgets, how is it going to be operationally implementable? And that's why those who are criticizing harmonizing several budgets, when we know that our revenue generation is still not where we need it to be and we're still borrowing, are questioning how is all this going to pan out? Is this going to end up being something that gets carried over to 2027 and becomes a new problem for either a second Tinubu administration or somebody else's administration? But right now, I think our fiscal space is heading towards a status of crisis because this harmonization remains something that doesn't look practicable. Now let's move on to issues around insecurity in Katsina State. And I refer back to my initial statement, which is that I connect everything to Remembrance Day and those statements made by General Gowon, specifically no victor, no vanquished. Now, if we look at no victor, no vanquished, we realize that therein lies some of the issues we faced because that's where the spirit of amnesty emerged from. Now, has amnesty been used correctly or incorrectly? That stands for those, for observers to decide whether the amnesty after the Civil War, there were no war crime tribunals, so to speak. You look at the Niger Delta amnesty. Now you look at those involved in banditry in the northern part of the country saying, well, it's our turn. Emi Lokam for amnesty as well. Why can't we as bandits in the north also enjoy this amnesty that other parts of the country? Now, the details are different. However, the spirit remains is that there's an entitlement that's now festering. And where are we going to cut this precedent? At what point are we going to say that, no, the rules and the law are bigger than any sentiment? Now, there are some write-ups that have emerged and some schools of thought where it's been argued that, well, these bandits armed themselves as a means of self-protection to begin with. Well, this is why we now need to also look at disarmament of these bandits. So there are several issues that fall out from this, and we'll continue to unpack them as we go ahead. Now, permit me this morning to quote the titles of 3 famous books of legendary African author Chinua Achebe. When the arrows of God are no longer at ease, things fall apart. Now, this best describes the crisis rocking the People's Democratic Party. And in this vein, the former governor of Ekiti State, Ayo Fayose, has been speaking on why the PDP is no longer Nigeria's main opposition party. In an exclusive chat with Arise senior anchor, Dr. Reuben Abati, Fayose also admitted that Peter Obi is the man to watch in the build-up to the 2027 presidential election. Let's take a look.
We must be very honest. When you are weak, tendencies are there for you to fall to the right of the stronger side. The challenges in the PDP, it's not the fault of Asiwaju, the president. No. The failure in my home, God forbid, is not the fault of my neighbor. The issues are very clear. The PDP caused themselves an insurrection. This is a house that divided against itself. And the nature of man is survival of the fittest. There are 2 dominant parties at a given time. Are we saying ADC is not dominant? Recently, Obi moved there. And I've said it, Obi is the only life in ADC.
There are other people there.
Who
is there?
Excuse me.
Amechi is there.
I never said they are not human beings there. I'm saying they are largely spent forces. Obi is, let Obi don't go to ADC, let Obi go to another party. Let's say Obi is in Accord. Accord will become,
is that?
Excuse me, I'm saying it to be, Obi is the only traction. Obi is the only meaning. Obi is the only factor. Obi is the only person in ADC that matters. And if Obi had not gone to ADC, and has gone, when Obi went to Labour that would never known became won elections to House of Reps. I'm not saying Obi will win this election. I'm not saying Obi will not win this election. But I'm telling you, even if they don't field Obi, if ADC fails to feed Obi, their case will be worse than they are coming together.
All right, so please do watch out for the full interview tomorrow, 9 a.m. That will be Tuesday, the 13th of January, right here on The Morning Show.